Good evening. Today is Monday, August 24th. Welcome to the City Council Subcommittee of Legislative Affairs. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I'm going to acknowledge the subcommittee members who are here tonight, Councilor Serino and Councilor Simbuto. Also, the members who are not on the committee, Councilor Jessica Giannino, Councilor Guinasso, and Councilor Joanne McKenna. Thank you guys for being here tonight. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. We have an ordinance establishing rules and regulations for short-term rentals. We also have a presentation relative to the Regional Saugus River Floodgate Project. And we also have a communication from the mayor regarding the transfer of Belle Isle and Rumney Marsh parcels to the Commonwealth. City Clerk, if you can read item number 1, please.
First item on the agenda is Council Order 20-209. This is an ordinance establishing rules and regulations for short-term rentals.
And just to note that there was an amendment submitted by the mayor, further amending Title 8 of ordinances of the City of Revere titled short-term rentals. So, Councilor McKenna, you have a question?
I would just like to add, I think I talked about this before, but when we were writing this, in the conversation came up that there was a software that would track any publications, applications, fees, whatever. And I really do think that we need this to keep these Airbnbs and short rental in check. So I think we should look into the software, definitely. They have a software specifically for Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
Councilor McKenna, I'm not sure the specific software. I do know when one applies for a permit, they will be entered into a database of short-term rental users. So, is that what you're talking about, or?
No, this is software that will track any publication. So if someone puts in the Boston Globe, beautiful Airbnb in Beachmont by the ocean, that software will track that and bring it up.
Mr. Mara, I believe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, the city already has the software. In fact, it's already in use. It tells us basically what the software does is it scrubs the internet for advertisements on all these various forums where, sorry about that. It scrubs the internet for at all these various websites and forums, and we have through 311 and through Reuben Cantor's office, you could get statistics like up to date. We know that there are approximately 120 or so sites in the city that are listed on these various sites, and that's how we will be able to enforce this regulation against places that have not complied with the registration requirements.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Excellent. Any other members want to speak? Councilor Giannino? Councilor Guinasso?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a member of the subcommittee, but I've been seeing information in reference in the last few weeks in reference to rentals of swimming pools for parties. And it's been occurring quite often throughout the country. And I don't see any provision in here because none of us thought enough of the situation at that time, thinking that, they would come in and rent the whole property. But what they're now doing is they're renting just the pool area, and they're allowing for these parties, and they do it on a daily basis. And so it's really becoming quite alarming what takes place. There was an unbelievable incident that occurred in Linfield, whereas there was a pool party that got out of control. And so I just think there should be some sort of item line here in reference to that, and we could do something on that. But I don't want to delay the process of this this agreement, because I think it's a long time in coming, and I'm certainly happy that it's coming to this point. So I look forward to the passage of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mara?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to Councilor Granasso's concern, one of the benefits of this ordinance is that we are only authorizing the use of short-term rental in properties that are owner-occupied. So one would at least hope that an owner who's present at the property would maintain sort of a closer watch on a swimming pool. I suppose that any future amendments to this ordinance can address the use of something other than the full property, for example, a swimming pool. But I think, as Councilor Granasso mentioned, that's something that we might want to address in an amendment rather than to delay this any further.
I agree that there would be something we could put into the ordinance later on. I agree. I want to acknowledge Councilor John Powers, who just entered the council chambers. He's also a member on the subcommittee. Councilor Janino, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a great ordinance, and it's long overdue. I know a lot of our residents are concerned because they're seeing homes in their neighborhood that now are getting strange cars and strange people coming in and out because people are taking advantage of Airbnb and different rental ordinances. So I think it's really important that, while we support people being able to do that, we also need to make sure that it's safe. We need to make sure that there's registered and there's accountability and we're keeping track of what's happening. I'm also concerned because I know in some areas people are using these to kind of take advantage of communities, and instead of building a hotel, they're building apartments, and then they're renting the entire building out as an Airbnb, and they're circumventing regulations. So they're not putting sprinklers in every room, they're not putting fire alarms in every room, and all the regulations that we hold hotels to, they're getting away with not doing that. So I think it's really important that we continue to monitor this. I think it's a fluid situation, and it's also something that is becoming more popular, so I think it's going to change more and more over the next few years. But I just think this is a step in the right direction, and I think it's important that we as a city are covered, and we're also protecting our residents and our neighborhoods. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. And good point, because this did take a long time to come to fruition because we wanted to make sure we dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and without any future legal battle against the city. So that was one thing we wanted to ensure. We wanted to make sure safety was covered, taxation was covered. We wanted to make sure that we could follow the process and implement rules and regulations that did not exist. So as of right now, there are no city ordinances on the book that puts the hammer down on short-term rentals. So this is rules and regulations. And so I commend Councilor Guanasso, Councilor McKenna, Councilor Keefe for working to put this long, elaborate rules and regulations forward. So thank you for your hard work. I know Councilor McKenna wants to speak once again, but first I'm going to go to Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues for all the time and effort they put into creating this. I think that it's long overdue for several reasons. First of all, the parking is an issue in the city, and we have to make sure that no one's coming in there and renting 4 or 5 rooms with 6 or 7 cars. The other thing that concerned me more was the money we were losing, the revenue on the 6% room excise tax. And not only the money that we were losing, but, we're encouraging hotels to come into the city now and and build a hotel and open it and provide jobs and provide commercial revenue and provide the meals and beverage tax, which is 0.75%, and also the 6% room excise tax. So when somebody rents a room in a home, what they're doing is they're taking business away from a hotel, a commercial piece of revenue in this city that we so sorely need. And then the other concern I had, and I know that's been addressed, is the protection. People coming in, smoke detectors, hardwired fire alarms, egresses. That's so important. I know I would not want to go to sleep at night worrying about some family that was sleeping in an apartment that didn't have those amenities and safeguards. So I'm very happy that this has been put together. And again, I want to thank my colleagues. They did an excellent job from what I can see. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And to your point, part of the regulations is that the property is inspected yearly. So when someone does first apply for a permit, they do the same process as if you were selling a house. They check to make sure there's proper smoke and carbon detectors. They make sure there's no hazardous or safety violations. So that is one thing I was very pleased to see when reading the legislation. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say that I have mixed emotions about this ordinance. I know we need an ordinance, and I'm happy that we finally have one that we're about to vote on. If I was king for a day, I wouldn't allow these things at all. That's how I feel about it. And part of it, as my colleague from Ward 5 spoke about, we encourage hotels to come here, and it's certainly a lot safer with a hotel that has to have a sprinkler in every room and all this other stuff. So, yes, this is a step in the right direction, but if I could take a big step, it would be not to allow them at all. I know we can't do that, and this is at least somewhat of a Band-Aid, but I'm not comfortable with it, and I wish we could force, sprinkler systems in anything that would be a short-term rental. And I think that we should have the strictest restrictions we could possibly put by law. Anyways, that being said, I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, and I'm certainly not going to hold it up. I know my colleagues have worked very hard to get this, and it is in fact protection, and I'm happy about that. So I'm certainly going to support it. I only wish we could eliminate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Morrow, I'm going to get to you in 1 minute. I'm just going to have Councilor Serino speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo the sentiments of the previous councilors. I think this is a great step in the right direction. Short-term rentals have been an issue, and I've been getting calls on them in the last few months. But one question I had that was brought up by a resident of mine, and it would kind of seem like a smart thing to do, if we can do it, Mr. Mara, I don't know if we'd be able to. Would we be able to limit the amount of permits that we allow for active short-term rentals? You know, we have a certain amount of liquor licenses, we have a certain amount of licenses like that. So to Councilor Zambudo's point about trying to, restrict it and to make it as safe as possible and as so it doesn't impact the quality of life of a lot of people in the city, would we be able to create language that would limit the amount of licenses that are given out? The amount of permits, rather, active permits.
That's a very... Mr. Morrow, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I think you'd be stepping into some due process issues there. This is an attempt to regulate the use of property by people who obviously own the property. Some of the what this regulation does in a lot of ways is it tends to discourage the use of the property, certainly for exclusive use as a short-term rental property. One of the reasons for that simply is We don't want to be taking available rental properties off the rental market. As everybody knows, there's a tremendous demand for regular rental housing. So the more properties that are removed from the housing market for short-term rental, the more it only exacerbates a serious problem. So this by itself will tend to limit the number of people who choose to do it, because if you do have rental space, it's going to be more profitable over time to rent it as a regular rental unit. I think for the city to take a position that, you know, we're only going to allow X number of short-term rental units in the city could start, it could run into some due process. I mean, we didn't analyze it that way, but I think it would run into some due process issues about interfering with the right of somebody to, interfering with one's right to use their property when other people have exactly the same situation and they can use their property in a certain way.
Understood.
And then and also what this does, don't forget, is it limits the number of days that a property can be listed for short-term rental to a cumulative total of 60 days in a year. So we think that this is designed sufficiently effectively enough to discourage really a very broad use of apartments for short-term rentals. And also, really, its objective was so that when you have, you know, the person who has a owner-occupied 2-family or 3-family home and is looking just to pick up a couple of extra dollars, but doesn't want to rent it completely, you know, throughout the year, this allows people to do it. So it's drawn fairly tightly, and we think it will accomplish the purposes that you've pointed out without specifically including that as part of the ordinance.
I understand, Mr. Mara, and that's honestly, I thought about that in my head, that it probably would be infringing on property owners' rights if we tried to restrict that. But I wanted to ask that question for the resident because I thought it, you know, it had merit. But I do understand what you're saying, and I'm not going to hold up the ordinance just, you know, for that matter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Council McKenna?
Thank you. Mr. Mara, can I ask you a question, please? A couple of my residents, I know Beachmont has the most Airbnbs in the city, and a couple of my residents are concerned about COVID and people coming from out of state and renting these Airbnbs and short-term rentals. Do we have any kind of an alternative process that we can do while we're in the COVID situation?
I mean, you know, that's a contemporary circumstance that isn't really contemplated within the ordinance itself. The ordinance was designed to address this over the long haul. In terms of short-term rental, I suppose that any type of inspection that would be required is going to address at least some sanitary conditions. But I don't see how the city would have any greater jurisdiction from a COVID-19 perspective regarding short-term rental than it would over an ordinary rental of somebody renting a property, or for that matter, you know, staying at a hotel or a lodging house or anything else. So this ordinance doesn't specifically address it. It wasn't contemplated in the creation of it. And I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how we might incorporate that into the ordinance. It might be something that can be incorporated more effectively through Board of Health regulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council McKenna. Seeing that no one else has any more comments,
I do have one more comment, Mr. Chairman.
sure, Mr. Mara.
you had made reference at the outset to the changes that had been submitted to you back on August 17th. And in the most recent version that was submitted to you, which is what we would expect you would report out, it included those changes in bold, underline, and if you have a color copy of it, it's in red. And there is one other, it's just the addition of a word, or two words actually, that should be included in your final version that you report out. So if you would indulge me, Mr. Chairman, I'd direct your attention to section 8.06.060, subparagraph C. That's on page 6. Do you have that?
I do. It's
Okay.
section C.
Section C.
Yep.
And
It's-
you'll see that the addition says, or rule or regulation promulgated by a condominium association. The two words or homeowners should be inserted between condominium and association, so that would address circumstances that are promulgated by condominium associations as well as homeowner associations. It's technicality, but could potentially be important.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's noted. And if we can take a roll call, committee members. I'm going to have the city clerk read it. I want the amendment read into the record, please.
The amendments presented to the Legislative Affairs Subcommittee are as follows. Section 8.06.015, exclusions. A, the provisions of this ordinance do not apply to the accommodation for a fee of a bedroom or attached apartment contained within and accessible through the operator's primary residence unit and is not accessed exclusively through a separate entry. B, the provisions of this ordinance do not apply to any month-to-month tenancy at-will agreement between a landlord and a tenant. C, the provisions of this ordinance do not alter or nullify any municipal ordinance governing the construction, alteration, conversion, use, and regulation of a lodging house, rooming house, or boarding house. 8.06.020 definitions. D is hereby amended by inserting the words "or partially owned" after the word "owned." Subsection E of that section is hereby amended by adding the words "owner, adjacent condominium unit in a condominium building or association that includes the operator's primary residence unit, any unit also allowed in whole or in part by the operator other than the operator's primary residence." Subsection H of that section is hereby amended by adding the words "for a single rental period of fewer than 30 days and not exceeding." Section 8.06.030, subsection A is hereby amended by adding the words "in any case where an operator uses more than one owner-adjacent condominium unit for a short-term rental, each such shall separately and charge the separate fee in accordance with this chapter an owner-adjacent condominium unit." Subsection 2 of that subsection is hereby amended by adding the words "in any case where an operator uses more than one such owner-adjacent unit for short-term rental, each such shall separately and charged a separate fee in accordance with this chapter an owner-adjacent unit." Subsection "ineligible residential units" is hereby amended by changing the section number from 050 to 060. Subsection C of 8.06.060, ineligible residential units, is hereby amended by adding the words "or rule or regulation promulgated by a condominium association or homeowners association." That's all the amendments that were presented, Councilor Morbido.
Thank you. I know I said we were going to take a vote immediately. I just want to, can you read a communication from Al Burrell, please? And then we're going to place that on file as well.
This is a communication from Revere resident Alan Burrill. Many Revere residents use Airbnb for a variety of reasons, mostly economic. Airbnb began operating without many regulations, and it has put Revere residents at risk. First, during the time of a pandemic, Airbnb rentals in Revere should be stopped immediately due to the large number of coronavirus cases in our city. People coming from other states into Massachusetts are supposed to quarantine, but this does not happen in the case of Airbnb rentals. In one situation, in a two-family home in Revere, Airbnb guests from Florida occupied an Airbnb rental and threw a pool party for 2 truckloads of people from Florida. There are no safety protocols in place for Revere residents who must deal with Airbnb hosts in multiple family homes and condominiums. In order to earn a cleanliness badge, Airbnb states that the listings are required to maintain a 24-hour waiting period after a guest checks out before entering to clean a listing, as a way to mitigate any risk of airborne particles for both hosts and guests alike. This does not happen, and there is no way to enforce it. Airbnb hosts and visitors are not following the parameters to keep our city residents safe. People are traveling who shouldn't be, and people are breaking social distancing rules for the sake of a weekend party or to throw a party. Airbnbs operate in places in our city that house elderly residents, residents with compromised immune systems, and residents with many risk factors. Airbnbs should not be operating in a city that is a red zone for the coronavirus. They put Revere residents in extreme dangers, and they can facilitate the spread of the virus. We are asking Revere to take stricter measures in informing property owners that they should not be advertising short-term rentals online. There is nothing that's essential about a short-term rental. We are asking the City Council at this time to put a moratorium on Airbnb rentals in Revere for the safety and health of all our residents. Secondly, however, the issue of Airbnb in our city goes beyond the pandemic. As stated, many Airbnb rentals take place in multifamily homes and condominiums, and adjacent homeowners have absolutely no say in their operations. Revere residents have to deal with Airbnb clients in their shared common space with no recourse. Condominium or multifamily dwelling owners have the right to say whether to approve a short-term rental through a permitting and approval process. For example, any co-owner, tenant, or occupant that lives within 100 feet of a pending short-term rental should have the right of refusal on the grounds of public health and safety. The city should require a permit with all residents or multifamily homes and condominiums signing off with a licensing fee. The current proposal of limiting Revere property owners and residents to a 30, 60, or 90-day limit of short-term rentals during a calendar year does not protect the residents. An owner can still rent without the city's oversight to any group of out-of-town vacationers or renters. Greedy and selfish profiteering leaves adjacent homeowners and dwellers to enforce public health guidelines such as masks and security during the visitor's stay. Hotels are designed with daily cleaning services and around-the-clock security to protect all occupants of the hotel. The neighborhoods don't have the same protections. In the meantime, the neighborhood and adjacent dwellers have to deal with out-of-state visitors using common entrances and areas, bringing diseases to their homes. The neighborhoods need protections from landowners turning their properties into rooming houses. Zoning ordinances or permits should be established to ensure public health and safety in our neighborhoods. Sincerely, Alan Burrill.
Thank you, Al. The reason I wanted the city clerk to read that extensive letter is because it's very important that people's concerns throughout the cities are heard. And many people like Al and Mary, who expressed her concerns to Councilor Serino, we want you to know that we're hearing your voice. That's why this important piece of legislation is a must. Currently, there's nothing on the books to regulate Airbnb. They can do what they want according to state law. So it's very important that we as a city create something, not even fine-tune, because there's nothing, absolutely nothing on the books. So I want to thank Al for writing that letter. Also, Councilor Guanasso would like to speak as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You would note that later on this evening, calendar item number 20-297, which is a motion from myself, which reads, motion presented by City Councilor Guanasso that the mayor request the Board of Health to close all short-term rentals, i.e. Airbnbs, immediately due to the COVID-19 being unregulated within the household and inviting and entertaining individuals from all over the country to our community with no restrictions. And I'm seeing that, Mr. Chairman, on a nightly basis at 27 Lowell Street and down the end of Lowell Street, that there's different individuals congregating there nightly with no identity to the community, and they're in number. So that's bringing a concern to all the other residents who reside in that area. If we have restrictions on our neighbors, what are we doing to these strangers who are coming in with no restrictions? They're infiltrating our community, and they're causing harm to our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Councilor Guanasso, and I believe many share the same views you do. But it's very important that we pass this legislation. This way, we can maybe add something into it later on that prohibits, during a state of a health crisis or an emergency, renting out Airbnbs, or short-term rentals, let me correct myself. So let's take a vote. Oh, Mr. Mayor, would you like to speak? No. Oh, Mr. Mary Gandolfo, would you like to speak?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Mary.
Hi,
how
good
are you?
evening. Can everyone hear me?
Mary,
folks hear me?
Mary, I promoted you to the mayor, if you noticed, by accident.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is it all right if I speak now?
Absolutely. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm glad you can all hear me. I did submit my comments in writing, but I would like to speak because I feel that with the Zoom meetings, the residents really have a hard time being heard, even though my comments go into file 13 somewhere. Without speaking or reading them and letting people hear, or viewers hear, we're kind of, people are not really hearing it. So I got on this time. I'm not always able to get on the Zoom. However, I am writing about the short-term rentals, and that's what I'm speaking about. I feel that they should not be allowed in neighborhoods at all because families moved into neighborhoods, purchased homes, rented homes to be away from the business district of their cities. And short-term rentals force businesses upon neighborhoods and upon unknowing families and homeowners after the fact. How is that fair to families and residents? You don't have to answer it. It's not fair. So also, I think the city needs to severely limit the number of rentals. I would say 5 would be the top number, if anything, or under. And I think there should be a query done on people who are renting these homes, many of them in neighborhoods right next to residents. Also, residents that I speak to, most do not want this at all. There may be a law that says you can have some, but residents don't want it. My question about apartments for people who rent and need apartments, you may say that they could only rent a short term for 60 days. So if someone's lease is up, is the landlord thinking, well, should I give them another lease or should I make a big buck on a 60-day and then do whatever? Where does that renter go? We put them at risk of homelessness as far as I'm concerned. There are already many problems with short-term rentals in the city, as Mr. Guanasso just spoke of, and probably a lot more and a lot worse than we even know. I am afraid of human trafficking with this. I do have a fear about possibly something like that going on in our city with short-term rentals where nobody knows who these people are that come in. So we do have to try to be careful of that and be very well aware of what's going on and what rentals are being used, if any, and protect people. Also, I want to fully support Mr. Guanasso's motion on the short-term rentals to have them stopped because of COVID. And I have a question. Has anyone ever been able to stop a sneeze? Because it might sound funny, but it's very hard to. And allergy season is here. Flu season is coming right behind it. And this, the people we see in the supermarket, on the bus, walking down the street, in church, or anywhere else, are just going shopping because they're here with a short-term rental and need to pick up some food from wherever in the country or outside the country. So we're exposing our residents through these short-term rentals right now, especially with COVID. And I would really like the council to think about that, in the city and all levels, to work on protecting the citizens here, number one, most of all. Thank you for listening to me, and please take my concerns into consideration. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Mary, and your concerns will be noted and placed on file and placed on record. Once again, this is something that we need to have in our city. We need to have some kind of rules and regulation for short-term rentals. Currently, it's non-existent. So with that said, let's take a vote.
On an ordinance establishing rules and regulations for short-term rentals as amended, Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. Council President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Chairman Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. The ordinance as amended will be forwarded to the full City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a presentation relative to Saugus River Floodgate Project. Mr. Hunt?
Yes, I'll try to keep it short since I think most of you have heard it. I was with the Army Corps of Engineers back around 1985 when I was working with Revere. And the cities of Malden, Lynn, and town of Saugus asked us to look into their flooding problems along the Revere. 5 citizen steering committees were developed. Frank Stringy was with us on Revere. We conducted over 100 meetings to evaluate the problems and look at alternatives. Alternatives included individual local protection projects for each community. Then we also looked at non-structural solution, floodproofing, flood raising, but the plan that was strongly supported by the 4 communities as well as the state and congressmen and legislators was the regional Saugus River Floodgate Project. The project would protect the region from the worst storm reasonably likely to happen. It would be 4 times more damaging than the blizzard of '78, and it can be easily modified as sea level rises. The project included floodgates across the mouth of the Saugus River with 9 gated openings from 50 to 100 feet wide each, tied into new shorefront protection along Lynn Harbor, and dunes and raised walls along Point of Pines, and then a park embankment between Beach and Revere Streets to stop any water overtopping the walls in the vicinity of the police station. And then there would also be some ponding areas. Another major feature was buying the 1,650-acre saltwater estuary to preserve it and protect it, and so it will provide floodwater storage when the gates are closed for interior runoff. The project will cost about $230 million at today's prices. The federal government the Congress had authorized it for construction and had approved financing 64% of the project. One of your state legislators committed to having the state pay the other 36%. Although the Secretary of Environmental Affairs at the time found that in the certificate, she found that the project adequately and properly complies with the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act and all its implementing regulations. And then the secretary appointed the MDC as the state sponsor who supported the project. One of the other features that came up during the review of the project was we had a lot of strong requests to open up the I-95 embankment so the upper 500 acres could flush again and it would restore those acreage. So in the suggested proposals I've been giving Revere and Saugus, there's two measures on how to get the project going again. One is to request that the congressional delegation reauthorize the project. Since it had gone inactive for so long, it was deauthorized. So we're asking them to reauthorize it because of the severe danger and imminent threat that you're facing from rising sea level. And the other alternative, the Corps of Engineers said the only thing they can do on their own is to meet their regulations, which since it was deauthorized, to request a new study start. That new study would take upwards of 9 years to get going, or 3 years to get funded, maybe. May take longer. And before construction ever started, about 9 years anyway. If we can get the congressional delegation to reauthorize the project, you can get it going in about 3 years. So you have those two processes, a new study start or a congressional reauthorization to get it going. I did provide Ashley a 13-page document that would provide most of the information the congressional delegation would need to write up a resolution to reauthorize the project. So there'd be a tremendous amount of benefits from the project. Revere, in the event of a standard project, Northeastern would see upwards of $300 million in damages in the event that storm happened. The region would see upwards of $1.3 billion in damages from that storm. So this regional project would protect against that storm and against rising sea level. So it's about the best plan that the region can see that would ever protect them from sea level rise. So that's why I decided to remind the region that that project is still out there, and hopefully you can get it going again to save your communities.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Certainly.
I wholeheartedly agree. We're a coastal community, and this has been, environmental factors have been affecting our city and neighboring cities. And this is why I'm going to put forth the motion that the mayor be requested to forward a communication to the city's congressional delegation, Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and Governor Baker requesting support and sponsorship of a resolution to reauthorize the Regional Saugus River Floodgate project. Further, that the mayor be requested to forward a communication and the necessary application to the Army Corps of Engineers to begin a new study on the Regional Saugus River Floodgate project. And if we can take, Councilor Janino, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If possible, I'd like to join you on that motion.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Hunt, and he is incredibly well-versed on this issue. It's something he's been working on for many, many years, and I do believe that this is a big issue for the residents of Revere, especially in the Point of Pines and Riverside area, and it's important that projects like this, we look at them and we don't forget that they're happening, because something like this has been sitting, idle for 20 years, and now we're in a situation where we have these 100-year storms every other winter, and the rainfalls have been happening constantly as well. So I think it's really, really important that we get on this as soon as possible, because it's not going to get better. Sea level is rising, the climate is changing, and every single year the flooding in that area is just going to get worse and worse and worse. So I think that being proactive and getting on this now is what we need to do. So thank you, Mr. Hunt, for taking the time to present to us tonight. And what you guys don't see at home is how much information he's given the council before this meeting. He's given us a wealth of knowledge and so much information on the topic, so thank you so much for that. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for being proactive and really making this a reality and pushing it forward.
I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want, we're a coastal community, and we want to be safe from environmental factors. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councilor Janino and the previous speaker. I think it's long overdue that our federal government and our state government and the city of Revere work together to come up with a plan and funding to correct this situation. I've been down on Mills Avenue and seen water coming in there at certain locations on the street, 7, 8 inches, some of it going into the homes down there. I've seen the same thing down in Oak Island, Elletton, York, Argyle streets. I've been down there when the water, again, has been 7 or 8 inches on the street. Now, I've always felt that people should not be coming home from work to have their dinner and walk into their home and find the flooding that has existed down there for some time. Back several years ago, under Mayor Ambrosino, we spent $1 million alone in the Oak Island area on Elletton, York, Argyle Street, and we tripled the capacity of the drainage system, the storm drains, the sewerages. We put a tide gate down there on the end of Arcadia Street, which serves as not only just there, but the Wonderland area, that whole area down there. So I think it's very important that we move forward on this, and I want to thank Councilor Janino for her support on this and her concern, and let's go from here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if we can just add Council Powers, Keefe, McKenna, Guinasso on the motion as well. Councilor Sereno is recused from this topic due to his job at the State Department. At the state, not the State Department. And if we can do a roll call, please.
Roll call of the committee members on the motion. Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Councilor Sereno is recused. Councilor Zambuto is absent. Council President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes, and Chairman Morbido?
Yes.
Yes, this motion received a favorable recommendation and will be forwarded to the full City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda.
It's a communication from the mayor regarding the transfer of Belle Isle and Rumney Marsh parcels to the Commonwealth.
Is there anyone who wants to speak on behalf of the mayor?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I am Frank Stringy, city planner, and I have been working on these since 2001. These are 2 very necessary land transfers that have to take place between the city of Revere and the DCR that involve city of Revere parcels within Rumney Marsh and Belle Isle Marsh. The Rumney Marsh land transfer, which is approximately 89 acres, is necessary to finalize the land swap between the city of Revere and DCR for the 6.5 acres of DCR land that was needed for the development of Waterfront Square on Ocean Avenue. That transfer was authorized by legislative mandate under Chapter 877 of the Acts of 1977. The second one is Belle Isle Marsh city-owned parcels, which comprise about 6.1 acres. This transfer is necessary to finalize a land swap for approximately 1.8 acres of DCR land that was needed for the construction of the police and fire public safety facility on Revere Beach Parkway. That transfer was authorized by legislative mandate under Chapter 154 of the Acts of 2005. So we've been assembling these parcels in cooperation with DCR for quite a while. Environmental assessments have been done. Appraisals have been done. We're now at the state right now. We're ready to have these conveyed to DCR. So tonight's votes by the City Council would be for land takings, which are necessary because these city-owned parcels were transferred to DCR. To be transferred to DCR were done via tax title, and DCAM required that these confirmatory takings be made just to confirm ownership by the city before being conveyed to the Commonwealth. So that's why we have to create the taking of our own property and confirmatory taking there. And the other two votes involve conveyances of the Rumney Marsh parcels and the Belle Isle Marsh parcels.
Thank you,
And
Frank.
that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions?
Bob O'Brien, I would just add to what Frank has said, the
Bob, you can
importance.
speak. You're all set.
Okay. I just want to add to what Frank has said. I completely support everything that Frank has said, and these motions have merit in and of themselves. They are also important because they need to be accomplished in order for the final transfer of land from DCR to the city is accomplished to allow for the construction of the new fire station at Point of Pines. So they have merit in their own right, but they also have merit as means to that end, which will be accomplished in a separate transaction pursuant to this vote tonight. So it's very much related to the fire station.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Does any members on the committee have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Council Powers?
this question is to Mr. Stringy or Mr. O'Brien. Wasn't these takings intended as a caveat for the police station down on the Parkway? Wasn't that involved in that somehow?
That's correct, Counselor. The parcels within Belle Isle Marsh are necessary to be transferred to DCR for that land swap.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, I would urge my colleagues to support this. This has an awful lot to do with the taking of the land for the extension of the fire station in the Point of Pines section of the city, and as soon as this gets approved, we'll go into that phase of it, and hopefully we'll have that fire station under construction within the next 6 or 7 months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Powers. Councilor Sereno?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the clerk, because this will ultimately end up in the legislature as a home rule petition, I will have to recuse myself on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call?
Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Zambudo. How could I forget you?
I don't know how you could ever forget me, Steve.
I don't know either.
Come on. So I certainly wholeheartedly support this transfer. I mean, this has been going on for many years, and it's not just a transfer. It's part of our obligation for the land that we got for the police and fire station on the Parkway, and it's also a piece of land that we're getting for the new Point of Pines fire station from DCR. So I wholeheartedly support it, but it's really our obligation. It's not something that I think we really have a choice to do. We really need to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members want to speak? City Clerk, if we can take a roll call. Yes, please read into the record.
Now therefore, voted in the furtherance of the conservation and recreational purposes for which the Rumney Marsh parcels are intended to be conveyed to the Commonwealth, the Council approves the order of taking substantially in the form attached hereto as Exhibit A, and the recording of the taking plan substantially in the form attached hereto as Exhibit B. Voted that no damages arising from any such taking shall be awarded at the time the order of taking is executed or when such damages might vest. However, the Council hereby reserves the right to modify the damage award at any time pursuant to applicable law, and further agrees to publish a notice of the taking in a newspaper of general circulation upon the recording of the order of taking for a period of 2 consecutive weeks. Voted that the Council approves the execution and recording of the Oak Island A&R plan with respect to Assessor's Parcel Map 19, Block 329, Parcel 10, substantially in the form attached hereto as Exhibit C. Voted that the Council approves the execution and recording of Belle Isle A&R plan substantially in the form attached hereto as Exhibit D. And voted that the Council hereby approves the conveyance approves the conveyance to the Commonwealth, acting by and through the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance and the Department of Conservation and Recreation, of all the foregoing parcels, and hereby authorizes the mayor to execute any and all documents and take all actions necessary and convenient to complete the foregoing, including but not limited to deeds for the Rumney Marsh parcels and the Belle Isle parcels substantially in the forms attached hereto as Exhibit E and Exhibit F, respectively. On the motion, Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Let me just make sure.
Present.
I'm sorry, Councilor Novoselsky is here?
Yes.
Voting yes? Councilor
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno is recorded as recused. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor President Morbido?
Yes.
Yes, the order of taking will have received a favorable recommendation and will be forwarded to the full City Council.
Excellent. This meeting is adjourned.
You ready to go, Ashley?
30 seconds.
Gotcha.
Like many times, Steve?
I'm like, what, the mayor? I'm like, Mr. Mayor, go speak. I'm like, the mayor, I'm like, the mayor. Hey, Ricky. Hey, Ricky. You like how I promoted Mary to mayor?
Councilor Novoselsky, I think we're ready to begin.
I'm ready to go. Is it safe? Here we go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ira Novoselsky. I'm chairman of the Subcommittee on Public Works for Revere City Council. I thank everybody for attending this afternoon for this meeting. We have one item on the agenda, and it's regarding a new pole locations on Salem Street for joint pole locations for National Grid and Verizon. And we had the public hearing on April 27th, and there's the first chance we had to have a subcommittee meeting on it. So I think is Councilor Serino on?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Do you want to start it off since we're both not happy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is National Grid? Oh. All right, is that better? Is that, okay. Is National Grid on the line? Okay.
Yes.
Who's here from National Grid?
Looks like
Socrates.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Socrates Perez.
Is it Socrates? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Hi, Socrates. All right,
How are you? How
Socrates.
you doing?
I'm well. I wish I were a little better. I don't want to take it out on you, but I really am livid at National Grid that you guys kind of went ahead with these poles on Salem Street. I noticed them a couple of weeks ago, but I wasn't 100% sure, and then I did confirm that those were indeed new poles, and the new poles that we had talked about back in April when Mike Cordima was still with us. I really, there have been a lot of issues that I've sent to National Grid over the past 6 months, and actually almost close to 8 months now. And, not a lot of stuff has been accomplished on your end. And specifically when I had mentioned about these poles on Salem Street, I was upset because there were already double poles on Lynn Street going up Salem Street, kind of coming from Linden Square up into Saugus, if that whole main road through North Revere. There are a few double poles there that I was hoping that we could get addressed before we added more poles. Now you drive by that curb and it's pole and pole. It looks awful. I understand that they might be necessary, but the fact that you guys kind of went ahead and did them, I'm a little upset. And I'm more upset because on Washington Avenue, which I know is not, close to Salem Street, it's a bit further away. At the intersection of Washington Avenue and Sargent Street, there's a double pole. I won't say it's dangerous. It looks dangerous. I don't know for sure if it's dangerous, but it's a double pole that's being held up by a buckle. And I mean, thank God when we've had the storm that we had last night, nothing happened. But I'm petrified that pole is just going to collapse and give way. And I've been sounding the alarm on that for a couple of months now. And National Grid, no offense to you, Socrates, I know it's not you, but National Grid hasn't acted with urgency on that matter, and that's kind of an urgent matter. So you went ahead and you put more poles in our city and in my ward. without addressing issues that are already, happening. So, I mean, residents have asked me if we could, ask the city solicitor if National Grid could be fined for this. I don't know if we want to go that far, or I really want to see some action in what I've already sent you guys, and at least work with us a little bit. So I think that's all I have for right now. But I am displeased, and I know later in the council meeting, you have 2 items before us regarding Blodgett Street, which is also in North Revere. And I will say this, I would totally oppose those. However, I understand that those, the work on Blodgett Street is going to be for the rail trail, improvements to lighting on the rail trail that runs behind there. So I'm not gonna, punish the people who use the rail trail by obstructing that. But if that wasn't for the rail trail, I'd be voting no on those. So I will be voting yes on those. But just please, Socrates, tell your bosses, tell whoever, to work with us and to get some stuff actually done instead of just coming in the city and kind of doing whatever you guys please. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
If I may add something.
Go ahead, Socrates.
I understand the frustration, and I apologize for the inconvenience. I'm here to work with you guys. If there is a way that you can provide me with the details that you guys need, I can forward that information to the appropriate person or people to handle the situation. And in terms of double poles, there is a process that goes through National Grid, Verizon, and any other utilities. First of all, we transfer to the new pole, then it has to go through the process of Verizon, Comcast, or whoever is on the pole as well before the pole can be removed.
Understood. Thank you. And we understand that process, Socrates. And we know there's 4 other entities on the poles that have to come off at certain times. But before I go, is there any other Councilor Keefe, Mr. President, would you like to say something?
Sure, but I think Councilor Powers wants to speak first, and then I'll go after him. Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, I didn't see him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Socrates, you're still here?
Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
I have 4 issues right now that are burning in my chest, okay? One of them is a pole on Woodland Road in Oak Island. It's been damaged. It looks like it's ready to fall apart. And that's been like that for a year. And I've had people out there from Ingrid looking at it, okay? Still there. Then there's one on School Street that one of my colleagues reported to me because it is the area I represent. And that's a problem. I noticed the other day when I was down in the Point of Pines at the corner of Linway and Chamberlain, there's a pole. It looks, there's 2 poles. One of them is holding the other one up, sort of. It looks like it's ready to cave in. And these are things, I'm not talking about double poles now. I'm talking about dangerous poles. Poles that should be addressed, should have probably been addressed months ago. So what I would like to do is if I can get a number from you, a phone number, and I can call you tomorrow, I'll give you the pole numbers, which I don't have with me right now, and the addresses or locations of these poles. Is that agreeable? Can we do that?
I will give you my email address, and then we can go after that. I can give you my
you want to give me
contact
your email
information after that.
Yeah, all right, that's fine.
All my information will be there in that email, so I can give you my email address. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I just want to have a way I can reach you and give you this information.
Yeah, no problem.
Because for a year, for a pole like that to be, that's wrong. It's an insult to the people that live in this city and to the city of Revere itself. Can you give me your email? Can you give it to the clerk?
Yeah, not a problem. I can forward that information. Do you want me to give it to you now? I can give it to you now.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're going to give it to her right now, right? The email? Okay. And then I'll contact you, and I'll give you all the information you need, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Through you to Socrates. Curiosity, is Dan Cameron, are you taking over for Dan Cameron, or are you just doing this project?
No, I was surprised that they gave me this because usually Dan is the one that handles all that information. But I'm here for the petition, but they told me to jump into the 5 o'clock one.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate it because, I mean, obviously, Councilor Serino voices a lot of concerns. We all share the same concerns, and I know the relationship is good, but it does seem lately the responsiveness has not been as good as usual, and I was curious if something was up with Mr. Cameron. He's usually very responsive, but I've emailed him a few times on some recent issues, so thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. President, are there any other councilors there that want to have to say anything?
Yes, Councilor McKenna is wishing to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have issues too, but Socrates, if you can give me your number, I will address them in a phone call. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, so now I'll say my piece. This has been in our committee since April, and I happened to be driving by Salem Street, Lynch Street the other day, and I saw these poles there. I said, they're not supposed to be there. So I happened to talk to Councilor Serino this morning, yesterday, and asked him if he saw them up. He wasn't sure, but he was going to double check, and they are up. And I know it's still in committee. Now, this infuriates me. And I know, Socrates, you're just this project manager for this particular project. And that you do bring things back to Dan, and Dan is usually our go-to guy and our liaison. But lately, and I'm not blaming Dan because he's the middle guy. He's the messenger. But as far as I'm concerned, the operations of National Grid and their people is poor, to say the least. Now, I've called in where they've had double poles and they ruined the sidewalk that they were supposed to fix the sidewalk. This was last month. They told me it would be done in 2 weeks. Here it is a month later. The streetlights, the new streetlights that we put up. I know there's a percentage that fail right away, but why does it take 5 months for them to replace them? Makes no sense at all. And this is an outside contractor that they use. And then there are locations that people have complained about the light too bright. Some locations where it's not bright enough. And we gave them lists. They were supposed to start August 1st. Here it is, August 24th. Do we see them working? No. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to vote on this and put it to our committee. And I'll ask the clerk to call the roll for the committee members. And honestly, right now, I am not voting for this, and I won't vote for anything that National Grid wants to do, even if I'm alone in voting no on all of these, the only one. I don't care. I'm just going to show my frustration and my disappointment in National Grid, who have no respect for us. And as the council said in there before, no respect for us, the residents, the city of Revere. Poor management and poor customer service as far as I'm concerned. So, any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Zambito wishes to speak.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. President. With all due respect to my chairman, I can't vote against these. And obviously, my colleague from Ward 6 said what the purpose of these particular poles are. But I would remind everybody, we've had like 3 or 4 storm emergencies that National Grid has been flat out on. So we can't really expect schedules to be kept in the last month or so, because things have been real crazy. But I agree that it's frustrating when we don't get some of these things done, but I know that the emergency poles, and there's been several in the city that needed to be replaced right away, were, and so I'm going to vote in favor of these tonight, and I know we've got I hope we have a meeting coming up soon on the joint utility poles. Madam Clerk, do we? 14th, okay, great. So I have to vote in favor of these tonight, and we'll go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And, again, with all due respect, that's your opinion. You feel that way. I feel my way. I think we're being very disrespected. And no matter what they want to put it up for. And they've done things on their own for themselves, and it doesn't even include us. And not for us. It's all for their own purpose. So with that, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll for the committee only?
Roll call on the petition by National Grid and Verizon to install 2 jointly owned poles at the intersection of Overlook Ridge Drive and Salem Street. Councilor Guanasso. Yes. Yes. Councilor Morabito.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo is absent. Councilor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Keefe.
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Novoselsky.
No.
No. This petition will be forwarded to the full City Council with a favorable recommendation.
So that was the only item we have. Thank you, committee members and councilors for your input, and we'll bring it out in the council chamber. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Counselor.